Why is it that tinnitus can get louder sometimes? Out of nowhere, it can spike. Also, there can be a period of hours where the tinnitus seems to be louder and affect my concentration, causing some stress, some anxiety, some worry. In today's video, Dr. Michelle and myself, Dr. Ben from Treble Health, will talk about the significance of spikes, increases in loudness of tinnitus, and really what you can do about it. This is a question that we get from our patients who work with us, from people in our community, certainly in the YouTube comments. Let us know right now, do you experience spikes or louder periods of your tinnitus? Let us know. We'll be looking for that. Dr. Michelle, this topic came up because people ask us this all the time. What kind of questions do you typically get from your patients who you work with?
I often get asked if there is something that I know that is triggering their tinnitus to get louder because they themselves cannot identify why their tinnitus goes from their regular baseline to something much louder, sometimes at the drop of a hat. Or I'll get asked if there are specific things that in our diet that can trigger tinnitus to fluctuate from, again, baseline volume to something much louder. So it's a very common question because it's a very common experience, especially as we're going through the habituation process to have these natural ebbs and flows or these fluctuations in tinnitus volume and awareness. So we're going to be answering some of the reasons why. And there are probably others that we're not going to be able to address. So if you do have other things that you've noticed that make your tinnitus louder, feel free to comment below.
Yeah, let's get into it. So first of all, it's worth mentioning that there's two different kinds of spikes, really. There's a short burst of tinnitus that lasts between 10 and 30 seconds. Let's say 5 and 30 seconds. And that can sometimes come up in one ear, a very high pitch ee. And I've been experiencing those personally, for 10 years. I think that there are some theories for why that is, but really that's not what we're talking about in this video. We're talking about my tinnitus gets louder for hours at a time, or maybe days at a time. And when that can happen, whoa, it can really change the course of my day or the course of my week. That's a real tinnitus spike. And that usually affects tinnitus if it's happening in both ears at the same time. It's not usually just a one ear kind of thing. So with that, we are going to review right now the different potential factors that could lead to a spike. Number one, I will start with, which is lack of stimulation. So if I have tinnitus and I'm in a quieter place and I'm just hanging around, I'm not on my phone, I'm not reading a book, I'm not talking to anyone. Maybe I have something on in the background far away. I'm just trying to relax. There's not much mental stimulation. The brain can latch on to whatever stimulus is in the environment. And what we know with tinnitus is that it's a condition very much affected by perception. If tinnitus is the only stimulus in the room, then I'm likely to focus on it. So that's one factor here.
Another major factor is increases in our stress or anxiety. So oftentimes stress and anxiety are tied in with tinnitus because those are some of the emotions that we have felt when our tinnitus first began. And so the mind really links the two of them together, and we may start to feel stressed or anxious because of other reasons. And tinnitus tends to then come into play and start to creep up in volume and in awareness. So tinnitus and stress and anxiety definitely tied in with one another, and one of the more common reasons as to why you've noticed your tinnitus getting louder.
And that can be stress related to work, related to family, related to interpersonal dynamics, related to elections, politics, global phenomenons, things going on in other parts of the world, the news. All of those factors can increase the psychological system to be more alert in a state of higher stress, and that can bring tinnitus up with it. The next piece we'll talk about here is sleep. Common question that patients ask and that the community asks. I just had my tinnitus spike right now while we're talking about this, actually. That was one of those short ones that lasted 5 seconds or so. Wanted to bring that up. So sleep. A common question is, when I wake up in the night, my tinnitus is much louder. And I'm not talking about the room's quiet. I'm talking about the actual level is much louder. Another question people ask is, I wake up after a nap and my tinnitus is much louder. I don't have a good answer to that. I have not heard a medical professional have a convincing theory for why that is. And that falls into the bucket of sometimes we don't know why tinnitus spikes or gets louder. We don't necessarily need to know for you to get better and habituate to it. but I wanted to address that. Lack of sleep is something, insomnia, lack of sleep, sleeping less hours than normal, that can be a reason to spike tinnitus. And it makes sense. When I wake up in the morning after a night of poor sleep, I don't feel great. My body feels weak. My brain feels foggy. It affects the brain. It affects the body. It affects all the systems related to our health. Tinnitus is sort of a barometer of the health of the body, so that when the body's feeling off, tinnitus can be louder. Lack of sleep is another factor.
Another common factor is loud noise exposure. So, this might be a response neurologically or psychologically, meaning that the auditory system itself is impacted because of the loud noise exposure. The hair cells have been overstimulated and maybe partially damaged, temporarily damaged as a response to the loud noise. But it also can be from your psychological response because you may be worried that having gone to the restaurant or having gone to the concert is going to cause your tinnitus to get louder. And so psychologically, it's almost as though you have it happen. You conjured the tinnitus to get louder because you were expecting it and anticipating it.
The last reason we'll talk about today of why tinnitus can be louder is that certain experiences trigger memories, or certain events trigger memories, which are wrapped around the psychological experience of tinnitus. The stages of grief, which we've covered extensively in another video, which we will link below, and how certain memories or events can trigger an emotional response, which spikes tinnitus. Now, sometimes something can remind you of your tinnitus and your brain can respond. We hear this all the time when someone who has completely habituated to tinnitus, they say, I never think about tinnitus unless someone's asking me about it or talking about it. I had one of our patients in our community with Treble Health kindly tell me that he loves our YouTube videos, but every time he watches them, he notices his tinnitus. And that's showing us that the perception piece, again, plus certain events or past experiences can lead to a spike in tinnitus. All this to say is that your tinnitus will go up and down. From a macro perspective, it typically gets much better. Consider working with a guide, a trained professional to help you through that habituation process, focusing on the cognitive tools to manage the stress and anxiety, the mental psychological piece of this. The same audiologist on our team, for example, would work on sound therapy, a comprehensive approach to personalized sound relief. And with that, you're likely to be okay. The spikes will come, you will have ups and downs, but the big picture does get better. Dr. Michelle, thank you for sharing your expertise and for being here. Goodbye, everyone. Please let us know in the comments if you have any questions, and we'll talk to you on the next video. Bye-bye.